Charles Blow is an opinion columnist in the New York Times. Danya Perry served as Deputy New York Attorney General, as well as Deputy Chief of the Criminal Division for the Southern District of New York, and both joined me now. Danya, I'm curious what you think of the DOJ sentencing requests here and sort of how the process goes into making these requests, generally speaking, across the board.
So there are specific factors that the government is supposed to consider in making their sentencing request, and that the judge is required to consider as well in issuing a sentence. They include, as you say, deterrence, both specific to the individual defendant and also general to the population, as you alluded to, the need to avoid sentencing disparities, the particular characteristics of the individual. So there are a number of factors that go into it. Here, of course, in their sentencing submission, the government stressed deterrence, as you just did as well. Here, they felt the need to request the most severe, some might say draconian sentences that they've requested to date. And they are trying to distinguish the sentencing that they are requesting here from that sentencings that have been handed down before, including for the Oath Keepers, which was about half what they are requesting here. And they're doing that mostly based on deterrence, but also by noting that this was the worst group, essentially, that they were the leaders, the first ones to breach, and at several points had the most followers. So that is their justification for these outside sentencing requests.
Charles, what do you think about the disparity as of now? Again, we now have charges against the ex-president, but up until now, this disparity between the foot soldiers and the folks calling the shots at the top, and what that means for whether we see this as aberrant, something that never happens again or doesn't happen again for a long time, or something that becomes normalized?
Well, it is in the same way that henchmen will always be punished more than the architects of a crime. People who are engaged in political wrongdoing are going to get a more lenient treatment than people who are engaged in political violence. So when you are deciding whether or not you are going to follow some, wink, wink, nod, nod of a politician to go out and commit violence, understand it. You're going to get the hammer brought down on you much more severely than the person who is winking and nodding. That said, deterrent only works if the punishment sticks. The big danger here is that Donald Trump is running for a re-election, has already said that he is going to look very closely at pardoning all of the people, or many of the people who were engaged in January 6th. And because Donald Trump, in order to demonstrate what he wants to demonstrate, which is that he wants to say that he is innocent, he has to also make the people who were part of his kind of grander scheme also innocent. So the deterrent won't work if the ultimate outcome is that you see that you can get away with it if you're on the right side of the strongest man.
That is exactly right, and precisely the kind of existential stakes here, which interestingly really run through that sentencing document by the Department of Justice, Danya, where they're really quite pointed about what we're dealing with here, right? Like basically the question of are we going to allow political violence like this to become normalized? And just an interesting note on that. One of the people, Christopher Worrell, who's a Florida Proud Boy convicted on 7 counts, was scheduled to be sentenced today in Washington. He is now missing, so we don't know where he went. But again, there's a sense here that it's important that these people be taught a lesson, and everyone be taught a lesson about the strength of the law.
Yeah, I don't know if it was coincidence that he appears to have fled right around the same time the government filed its brief, but certainly the specter of a decades-long sentence could have motivated him to flee. But yes, the government stressed that repeatedly, that this is the worst, one of the worst acts of domestic terrorism that this country has seen. And they really strike that note over and over, as you say. It's a through line throughout the 155-page, I believe, submission. And, the defense in response said, look, this is really not domestic terrorism. It compared it, to other conduct by those like Timothy McVeigh and some of the mass shooters that we've seen. And they've said, this is not that. And, it is a very large sentence. And to your point, there is plenty of empirical evidence that it is certainty and not severity of punishment that really deters. So we'll see what this judge does with, that dichotomy.
And the certainty, of course, is can all be undone, Charles, as you're talking about. I mean, I hadn't even remembered that. Of course, he's sort of running on this pledge that he's going to pardon people. He's running on the pledge that January 6th was good, that it was a noble effort, that he'll finish the job this time. And in terms of that distinction between the sort of henchmen and the sort of planners, what's interesting is there appears to be at least one individual who falls into both categories. Remember, Trump says, I'm going to march with you to the Capitol, and he doesn't, even though it appears that he actually wanted to storm the Capitol based on some of the testimony of Cassidy Hutchinson. Kenneth Chesebro, we believe to be one of the unindicted co-conspirators in the federal case, and is also named as a racketeer and a conspirator and charged in Georgia. He was at the Capitol, on the Capitol grounds, it appears. Kenneth Chesebro, the lawyer associated with Donald Trump's campaign who thought up the legal theory behind the so-called fake elector scheme, appears to have been on the grounds of the U.S. Capitol on January 6, 2021, according to a review of public source video and his own former mentor. So we have in Chesebro at least one example, Charles, of those two categories overlapping.
Yes, but we should say, obviously, that there's no evidence that he was engaged in violence, but he was there. It is remarkable how many people were either at the speech before the violence happened, who are prominent people, including Jenny Thomas. Les said it, she left before anything happened. But there were so many people who were there in the midst of this atmosphere when they were fomenting this and urging people to get excited, and that is what led to the wave of people marching down the street to the Capitol. Those are the people, however, who are going to get the brunt of this, and that's part of how unbalanced the criminal justice system is. It is always going to go for the lowest criminal, give them the most punishment, and white collar criminals, will get away with less. But you have to think about that when you are volunteering your body and your liberty and yourself to be someone else's muscle.
Charles Blow and Danya Perry, thank you both very much.